Zoom out. Sounds like Yes! Yes! It's the jingling. Today we are making Ren Faire tunics fit for the whole family. So if you need tunics for your next Ren Faire LARP, then this video is for you. The tunic that we are going to be making today is based off a medieval Viking tunic or kirtle. I will be doing the pattern for the over tunic, so the tunic that you would wear on the outside, and not the undershirt or skirt that you would wear underneath that is a little bit more closely fitted to your body. However, unlike in medieval Viking era, I will not be making this out of wool or any of the heavier fabrics that you would want to wear for an over tunic, mainly because the Ren Faire that we are going to is in September, and it is still really hot out. So unless the weather takes a weird turn, I do not want to be sweating so much that I pass out while I'm trying to enjoy the fair. So I will be making these tunics out of lighter fabrics like cotton or linen. So the website that I used to get the design of this tunic is vikingsof.me, and I will link that down below in the description for you. They have a really good outline of medieval era Viking attire. I did print off some of their diagrams to help me while I was doing this process. So we are going to follow these instructions as best we can to make a tunic. The first thing that we need to do for this project is measure our bodies. And then what we are going to do is, yes, we are going to make a mock-up. On to the measurements. Whoa. Guess we're in the secret measuring space.
The what?
Another dimension, just for measuring. So the measurements that we will need for this are, you're going to need the length measured from your shoulder to your knee over your breast, so down the front. If you would like to make a tunic that is longer and into a dress, you can use this exact pattern to make a dress as well, which is awesome because you just have to make it a bit longer. So if you do want to make a dress, you're going to measure from your shoulder to your ankle. Then you need your arm length. And for the arm length, you need from your point of your shoulder out to your wrist with a bent elbow. So you're going to come over to your wrist from your shoulder point here. The bicep is next, and then you want to go around the thickest part of your arm for the bicep. The wrist I thought was interesting because you're going to measure around the thickest part of your hand for the wrist. So basically you're not going to make this too tight and only measure your wrist. You're going to measure around your hand so you can get your arm in and out, which makes sense. The next measurement you need is your chest. So you need from your armpit to your armpit going over your breast, so around the front part of your chest. Then you need your shoulder to your armpit. So you need from your point of your shoulder to your underarm area, so in your armpit. And then you need for the gores. So basically the construction of this is like a big triangle. Shapes. Math. What is it? You need a big rectangle. It's got a hole cut in the top at the middle point for your head. And then you have these triangle pieces called gores that go in down the side, holding the front and back pieces of the tunic together. And they just create extra width there for you to make it a little bit more flowy, so that instead of coming down like a straight rectangle, this is going to come down and go out a little ways at the bottom. So for the gores, you need to measure from your waist over your hip to your knee. And if you want to do a dress, so you would like to just do an elongated version of this, you're going to go from your waist over your hip down to your ankle. Last and maybe second last for measurements, you want to measure your neck. So you're going to measure around the lower part of your neck and then cut that measurement in half. The last measurement that you can do, if you so choose, is to measure around your waist. And what that will allow you to do is give you a little bit more of a snatched look. So if you want your tunic to come in a little bit more at the waist before you hit the gores and comes out. So if you're making a dress and you want it to be a little bit more form-fitting, or if you would like your tunic to be more form-fitting, then you can measure your waist. And then when you're cutting out your giant rectangle, you'll just come in a little bit and then go out for the bottom again. As far as I can tell from my diagram. You ready to go back home?
I'm living here now. Bye.
Bye. Using those instructions, I am now going to measure myself, and then I have an old sheet, so instead of using my good fabric, and I'm going to use this to make a mock-up. So my arms are too tight, and I even measured generously around my forearm, and yet here we are. The width of this though is really good, so I think I'm really happy with that. Okay, arms need to be bigger because she's got guns. Let's at least get to cutting fabric. So this is the fabric that I bought for my tunic. This is linen, but look at the color of it. He's so pretty. I hope I bought enough of it. I'm not gonna do another mock-up. It could go wrong. It could go very wrong, but we're gonna wing it. And I'm gonna cut that to size and then cut out all my pieces and sew it together and then check it and see if I've ducked up or not. I ended up ironing my fabric because I was having such a hard time getting this laid out correctly. And you can see that my fabric was not cut even. So it was making it a pain in my bottom to get the size I need. So basically you cut a rectangle and fold it in half, and that is the body of your tunic. Then you mark the position of your neckline and you cut a little semicircle for your neck. And then you cut a straight line down from that, and that is the keyhole that goes down the front of the shirt. You can do this a little offset if you choose as well. Once you have that all cut out, then you are going to cut out your arms. I started by cutting rectangles and then angling in on one end where the wrist would be. A little update. So I have decided a couple of things. So based on this little drawing here of where the arm comes into the tunic, you're supposed to cut in a little bit and then angle this as well. I've decided to leave this straight across here. Of the dresses that I made previously, I didn't angle them in and they turned out fine. So I'm going to take a gamble on mine and just leave that straight. I also decided, because the arm wasn't fitting at the bicep, when I cut my area for the wrist, I ended up cutting an angle from the wrist off to the bicep width at the top, and I probably took a lot of fabric off that I needed for the bicep. So what I did was I went halfway down the arm and then just trimmed up the side on either side below the elbow, basically. So I narrowed this part of the sleeve more than this part of the sleeve. Unsure if it'll work out. We'll see once I have it sewed together. What I'm going to do now is, since I have the tunic portion cut out and the neck hole cut out, which I made a little smaller this time, I measured closer to my neck. So I'm going to sew my sleeves to the tunic and then stitch up the side of the tunic as well. Sew the sleeves together. I'll try it on and make sure it's fitting properly. And then I'll figure out the length of the gores that I need at that point in time, because I feel like my measurements are going to be completely off. On to sewing. I gotta stop myself before I keep just blah 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 blah. Just one sleeve, two sleeve. So I have marked the middle point on here. So that's that, and then this is where that folded shoulder line is with this mark here, and I'm just matching them up together. This way you don't have to try to sew a sleeve together and then sew a sleeve to a shirt, which can be a little bit more challenging sometimes. Groovy. Let us away to the sewing machine. Sounds like
The next day.
Zoom out. I was having so much trouble with my sewing machine yesterday that I just gave up later on after dinner. I have the Singer Heavy Duty and I didn't have the right bobbins. I bought new bobbins. They were not the correct bobbins. At any rate, I think I figured it out. Fingers crossed that we have no more snags during this project because it was driving me crazy. On to the project. So what I've done for this one, instead of sewing on the sleeve like you normally would, basically, because this is just the tunic top parts, all one piece, I just laid it out and then flat stitched on the sleeves on either side. So now I have this sort of with sleeves coming off of the rectangle bit like this. I hope you can see that. So we haven't sewn up our sleeves yet. They are open. We will sew those after the fact. We are sewing from the underarm down to the waist. I don't know why you have that shoulder to armpit measurement. I honestly don't. I guess you could make, like, add a piece in here if you needed to make this area bigger. Like if you found that your sleeve here was too tight, you could add in a square piece, fold it in half and sew it in here. Essentially create a piece to give you more room in this area. But so far, based on the instructions, they're saying sew underarm to waist and then you sew up the sleeves. I'm going to pin up a few of these areas and then I'm going to stitch sleeves up and this waist bit up. We're going to check and see if these sleeves are going to be too tight on me. I did make them a little bit bigger, but as I was saying, I think you could easily add in an extra piece here in your armpit because someone like me, this is often a tight spot for me. It is loose enough for me currently, but this area here is really pulling in, and I didn't sit the arms back this way. With this one, I just left them more at the edge because I knew that was going to be an issue. Yeah, that's going to bother me. Editing Pam here. I realized something very important about this shoulder to armpit measurement that I did not realize the entire time I was constructing not one, not two, but 3 of these tunics. Shoulder to armpit measurement. What could that possibly be used for? Maybe it could be used for that problem I had with having my arms be too tight. Yes, I think so. So when you were cutting out your arms and you're cutting your wrist width and your bicep width, there's a third measurement that you need for that, and that is the shoulder to armpit measurement. I believe. It doesn't actually say in the instructions on their website, so this is just a guess for this. However, I feel like if you use those 3 measurements and then angle up to that widest measurement of that shoulder to armpit, you will have a wider arm area, and it will also give you a better idea of where to sew your arm down to from your shoulder to your armpit, which makes a lot of sense. I don't know why it didn't make sense to me at the time, but hey, here we are. If this still doesn't work for you, you can also put the gussets in. I think they are also a great option, and it is what my husband has done in the past with his tunic as well when he had the same issue and it just was too tight around the shoulders. Nitro. I suggest you decide what works best for you, which is why we do a mock-up! Yay! They suck, they're time consuming, but that's what they're there for. And now back to your scheduled programming. I feel like I'm going to take a square piece of fabric and I'm going to insert it in here just to make this underarm piece a little bit wider. So yeah, I'm gonna be seam ripping. Oh joy. It gives you just an added little bit under your arm. So I'm gonna sew this one up and try it on. Yes! 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 So glad I did that. Oh my gosh. Yes! Just a 4x4 square added in underneath there. Gave me a little bit more freedom and movement in my arms. Yes! So happy I did that. Whew. Now I can do the other side and move on. Diamond shaped patterns under both arms now. There we go. Giving us more freedom in our upper body for movement. Hooray! Woo! So now my next step is to do the gores. So the gores are triangles that are going to go in here, essentially making this a little more flowy. If you want a tighter fit, you could stitch this up, but that's more of an undershirt. So we're going to add a little bit of gore in here. What I need to do is just decide the width that I would like my gores to be, and then measure down my length. For the width of the gores, what I think I'm going to do is just do the width of my leg at the bottom. So down here, I think I'm going to measure this width and make the gores be that width. It's arbitrary, I know, but you can make them whatever size you like. We have our gores in down the sides. Yay! Woohoo! Now I can finally move on. The next thing that we are going to do is the hem. The bottom of our tunic is now hemmed. And the next thing I'm going to do is hem the sleeves. Cool. Last thing I have to do is the neck. Awesome. Now all I have to do is make a couple more. Oh, yeah. Oh, and now I have tunics for the whole family. I'm not going to say this project was a super easy beginner project. However, if you take your time and just go through the steps one by one, these tunics really are not that many parts. You can add trim on these as well. The sky is the limit for you. You can do whatever you want to make these tunics your own personal style. This is just what they look like as a base model. If my husband can make one and I can make one, I truly believe that you can make one too. If you're looking for another fun project for your next Ren Faire or LARP, I suggest you check this video out next. Until next time, happy crafting. Bye. 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 Bye.